Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming back to another Repower conversation. It is such an honor to meet up with my sister from a different state. Little backstory, met through another program that we vibed with, had this sort of magnetism with one another, and it became more than a friendship. It was almost like family. So welcome, Ashley Rios, to this Repower conversation, and thank you for being here.
Thank
She
you for having
is
me.
not only my sister from another mister, but a personal trainer, a wellness and nutritional coach, and a guidance in that space, and has been for a very long time, and has learned a lot of big lessons, and can't wait to drop a whole lot of bombs. And we're ready to hit the rack today, with
Yep.
all the knowledge that we're about to get dropped on us. Um, for this conversation, Ashley, I am so excited to pick your brain, get into your mind of your backstory, because I think I know a little bit, but I want you to tell our fine people about your empowerment journey from Ashley, little Ashley, high school Ashley, and then when that empowerment really took off.
Ooh, okay. So I will spare all of you guys the nitty-gritty details and try to keep it as brief as possible. But basically, like, if I had to describe myself and my journey in a very quick way, I would say I definitely always chose the path less traveled. Typically, the much harder, more difficult route in all aspects of life. Went obviously went through school, then I went into college, changed my degree, like 4, 5, 6 times, took my, sweet like 8 years in college, what takes everyone else 4. Was always kind of just like marching to the beat of my own drum. Went to college at a very young age. I was 15 because I graduated a year early from high school. So like when I tell you like I did everything in the non-traditional way, like I really did starting back in high school, just like cut off my senior year of high school, merged 11th and 12th grade together, did all of the things, left high school early, was already the baby in my grade to begin with, went to college at 15, obviously had no idea what I wanted to do. You still don't know until you're in your 30s, people still don't know. So here I am 15 in college trying to pick a career path. So we know how well that went. So we changed our major a bunch of times. My parents really loved me at this point because I was like, I wanted to be a teacher. Maybe I'll do nursing. Maybe I'll do business. And then, long story short, I ended up actually transferring and I graduated with my Bachelor of Fine Arts in Sculpture and a psychology minor. So, again, another path where my family and everyone was like, what the hell are you going to do with that? Like, this is, again, the path less chosen, the really difficult route. I'm going to be, an entrepreneur. I'm going to be a starving artist, like definitely like I'm not going to have a stable career. I'm going to do everything the really hard, complicated way. So that has basically been me in everything: school, sports. I did CrossFit for like 8 years. I always, was like the hard path to do everything and always putting in tons of work, tons of hours, learning a lot of lessons along the way, which has led me to basically be able to help expedite the process for a lot of people and a lot of my clients today because I did all of the wrong things for you. So you don't have to do them. Um, and then basically, that kind of in a roundabout way, I was, in art school making a lot of artwork at the time about the body and the female body in particular and how that played a role in society and how society played a role in how, women represented themselves. So it seems really far-fetched and left field when I first tell people like, oh, my degree is in this, but it actually now seeing the work that I'm doing today is very much so connected. And I look back often, I graduated in college in 2011. Um, so aging myself here, but I look back at like my thesis, for example, and I see the work that I was doing at the time, which,
Mhm.
was a huge hanging sculpture from the ceiling of like, I casted people's body parts and
Wow.
sewed them together and made new bodies. And it was like this whole thing. And I look at that now and I'm like, oh, okay, that actually makes like total sense because now I work with both male and females, but I would say predominantly females and very much, in a lot of just like helping females in general feel empowered, feel strong in their bodies, teach them, what they need to be doing to eventually get to that point, helping them feel strong, helping them feel educated, in a field that is getting better, but like females are often underrepresented and undereducated, right? Like everything is always tailored towards the male or like bodybuilders or like, the stereotypical like gym bro. And um I want, again, both males and females, but I want everyone to feel really good in their own skin and feel like they know what they should and shouldn't be doing and that they just like can live that long, healthy, active life. Um, no matter what lies in front of them. And that's really what I do now, present day, to try and, so like weird journey,
Mhm. Mhm.
went to college forever, became an art major, and now, worked in the gym space. So I skipped over that, but I was in the like corporate gym setting for 8 years, coached CrossFit for 8 years, did some competitions, and then ultimately branched off and decided to do my own thing back in 2020. And we've been running with that ever since. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like a brief glimpse into me.
So full circle though to hear the connections that have come from way back when and how they're being used and how you are tapping into, like you said, that road less traveled, but essentially it was the best road to travel to have learned as much as you did at the time in order to
Mhm.
guide where you're at today, and where you're moving forward to. But tell me a little bit, was there a moment as a child or as a young adult where you saw that this is who I am? This is me being me, and I am going to sort of like you said, do things a little bit of a harder way.
Yeah.
Was there
I would
something that
say probably college, right? So like I was raised in a very traditional Italian Catholic household,
was
very strict parents. Always had to have really great grades. There was a lot of pressure around performance and like those were the priorities, right? Like you need to have A's. If you have a B, okay, but like anything less than that, definitely not acceptable. And it was like, so by any means necessary, I had to make sure at all times that I was performing or doing whatever I could at the time to pull off those grades, right? Like cheating on my social studies tests so that I would get a good grade, like because there was a lot of pressure in the household to do that, right? And like what I was able to do outside of that in terms of extracurriculars and things like that was very much dictated by my performance in school, right? Like
yeah,
you are a kid, you're supposed to do really good in school. Like
yep,
that's your responsibility. I had a job after school at a very young age from like 13, I think is when you get your working papers or when you used to get your working papers. So like was immediately you
yeah,
know, if you want a cell phone, you need to have a job. And that was kind of like how I was raised. And then I got to college and, moved out of my house at 18, couldn't wait, like busted out of there. I was like, I am out of here. I
yeah,
mean, my parents are great, still have a great relationship, right? I'm not going to like bash them, but I was like wanting that
yeah, agreed.
freedom and that ability to be able to explore and do other things. And then you get to college and it's like, I remember that like the pivotal moment for me from like traditional schooling to art was probably I was at community college at the time and I took for an elective I took a ceramics class
Mhm.
and I had a female teacher. I thought she was like the coolest thing ever. And I learned how to build things and throw on the wheel. And I became like totally like obsessed. And I was like, and then one of my college roommates at the time was also taking a lot of art classes. And I was like, this is so cool. And it was like something that was kind of always like, yeah, you take art in school, but like that can't be
Right,
a career. So
right.
like the, you know, rebellious kid in me was kind of like, well, then this is obviously what I'm going to choose to do as my career because like you told me I couldn't. So now I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
And I did do it. And I had a job in the field after school after I graduated, and I went, didn't just become an art major. I was like, I'm going to do a Bachelor of Fine Arts, which is
Yeah,
even more schooling,
that's
more
what I did.
credits,
That's what I did.
more time. And
Yep.
then I was like, and I'm going to have a minor,
Yeah.
So it was like, I just kept kind of feeling like I had to like stick it to the man almost. And then same thing with personal training. I remember when I was, I got laid off from my art job and it was like, okay, I was very into fitness at the time. I was always an athlete my entire life. Um, and then I found CrossFit as a like young 20 something year old and was immediately, drank the Kool-Aid and was hooked. Um, and I was like, okay, well, like I'm really passionate about this. Like I want to be able to also do this. And I became, studied to take the exam, became a trainer, started, took the course to coach CrossFit and did all of those things and worked 3 jobs for many, many years in order to be able to do that. And I remember like my dad in particular, my mom was always kind of like, you can do it. She was always like, my cheerleader. But I remember my dad being like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this isn't not a career. You can't make enough money doing this. I at the time was making like $200 to $300 bi-weekly.
Yeah.
So like we could see why he was concerned. I was like 22 years old. Like, how the hell is my daughter going to survive on her own?
Yep.
Um, and again, I kind of just like stuck with it. And I was like, I know I can do this. I know if I hustle hard enough, if I just keep showing up, I can make this work. I really enjoy it. I don't care if I'm not making a lot of money. And then, we fast forward to now and, I'm making, more money per year than my father ever did. And it's
Right.
like just crazy. And it was
Yeah.
like all because I just kept being like, no, I'm going to do this. No, I'm going
Mhm.
to do this. And I had supportive team. Chris, my husband now, was like, we were dating at the time and he was always very, very supportive. And, was like, you can do it. He used to give me like Dunkin' Donuts gift cards so I'd be able to afford coffee because like your girl was that broke, like had no money,
Uh-huh.
no
Uh-huh.
money. So yeah, it kind of started in college and it was a long-winded response, but
Yeah, we
that's how
share
we
a
got where we
similar
are.
background. That's for sure. We share a very, very similar background and the road of childhood, and I think that's why our connection was so strong from the beginning, our connection of our childhood, our connection of what it looked like to be a creative, to go in an opposite direction of how we were raised and in our household and the expectation of what college was and what work was.
Mm-hmm.
And that just wasn't identified as creatives as a job, as a successful way of living. We
100%.
were
It was more
pushing
of like
somewhere else.
a hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there was no other way to put it. It was, and still feel like even in the position of a creative or as an entrepreneur or as a founder and business owner, it's still looked at as are you gonna really do this? Are you really gonna make it happen? How are you making it happen? What how's it going? Well, how's it going? And I
Oh
mean,
yeah, I still
well,
get questioned.
still the conversation around the table, right? I mean, that's how we
Yeah,
were raised. It was very open.
20 years later.
Yep. 100%. So tell me, who was a figure in your life at the time, back when the pivotal moment changed? I know you mentioned your college roommate, but who was that figure for you, that sort of empowerment, that fierce, that I'm gonna do it? And how did you make sure that you stuck with it too? Because there's always
Yeah,
external factors that play a role into that and to taking a
for
big leap.
sure. So I feel like looking back, there really weren't many adult figures that I would say that, like, gave off those vibes to me.
Okay.
Um, in particular that I can think of, because like, everyone around me was very, like, you know, you have a government job or you have a, bank job, or, like, everyone was in very much so in, like, a cookie cutter setting.
Yeah.
But I would say if I had to pick someone, and we're still friends to this day, my best friend I met in second grade, and I've been fortunate enough that she's still in my life and still lives local. And we've
Wow.
been friends ever since. Our birthdays are 2 days apart. Like, it's crazy.
Wow.
So she had a very rough upbringing, and she was faced with a lot of adversity from a very early age throughout our whole lives. I witnessed literally everything. And she just always kept showing up. And she was like, at the time, working in a very traditional, like, bank job, but she, like, again, against all odds, like, went to college, excelled in college, received grants, went on to get her master's, now has a very, like, great job with American Express. And she just, like, always kept, like, defying the odds and doing the thing that no one ever thought that she could do.
Yeah.
And that was who I was like, like, we've been very, very close literally since second grade. So I would say, like, if I had to pick someone, it would probably be her, because she just, like, was fierce and still
Yeah.
is fierce. And she always, like, very much so marched to the beat of her own drum and just, like, keeps proving everyone around her wrong, and has built a very successful life for herself at this point.
Wow.
And, like, her upbringing, definitely, like, the cards were stacked against her hard, and it would have been very easy for her to, like, go down a multitude of very different paths, and she ended up going down.
Wow. I love that it was almost a, um, paralleled support almost because it was someone similar to your age, and it was like, "We're gonna do this together. We got each other's backs. And I'm
Yep.
sure she would say the exact same about you as well.
Yeah.
I can definitely tell, and I can definitely feel it. I wanna know what was sort of going through your mind and the steps that you were taking when it was the 3 different jobs, the 3 different things to do. You were running crazy. There is no frickin' work-life balance. We don't have any of that. We have this sort of give and take, knowing that something is on the other side. We may not be able to see it, but obviously to keep pushing, to keep moving forward and, you know, putting some power and putting some fire under our own ass to keep going. But what strategies helped you maintain your position in your own life,
Ooh,
being
great
able to keep
question.
going?
So I would say initially it was probably very much so just, like, making ends meet, right? Like, I had to be doing all of the things to pay my bills, to continue not living home. Like, it was just like, I have to do this because this is the life that I want. And this is by, like, any means necessary right now. We're doing the thing.
Okay.
As I've matured and, learned a lot of hard lessons and, done all the things the wrong way, I would say now, especially as, like, an entrepreneur, I'm a new mom. I just had a baby in December. Um, Working full time, husband works full time. I have 3 dogs. Like, there's very much like I am someone that operates and teaches others to operate I lean heavily on, like, systems, routines, and habits. Um, and, like, personal non-negotiables, especially now as an adult. And those things have helped me really. And, still, obviously, we're, like, navigating through new territory, right, as a mom. So, like, there is still a little bit of figuring out right now in this current season. But, you know, what's really, really important to me? What are my priorities? And then, like, kind of saying fuck it to everything that doesn't fall on that list.
Yep.
Because, especially now, being an entrepreneur, full time mom, wife, all of the things, right? Just like a lot of you guys are experiencing, like, there isn't a lot of fluff time. There isn't a lot of time to do things if they don't fall on the list of what's very high in priority to me, right? So that I can feel good and, be a good person in all these different areas of my life, then, like, there just isn't time for them. So I
Yeah.
think it's very, very important to really figure out what your priorities are and what's important to you, and then building the habits and the systems to support those things, and trying to streamline as much of those things as possible so that way you can juggle and do all of the things.
Yeah. And early on, and making sure that that mentality happens very early on in the process of seeing that this is where I'm going, or this is where I want to go, or this is what's going on because of a situation or whatnot. And being able to say, like, get down to business, focus hard, prioritize even harder, and streamlining that to make shit happen. There
Yep.
is no other way.
Yeah, pretty much. And it was like, especially for me in terms of my career, it was like, I had this degree, but I had been laid off from the art field pretty early on. And it was like I was on unemployment at the time. I was literally scrubbing toilets with a friend of mine. Her father owned a cleaning business, and he took me on, paid me cash off the books, the whole thing. And I was like,
Whole thing.
literally, when I tell you, scrubbing toilets of throughout the Hudson Valley at places that I like, the bar I went to in college, like, I'm not exaggerating. And it was like, yo, this has to work.
Yeah.
Like, there is no backup plan because, like, A, I'm not doing this forever. And, like, B, okay, yeah, maybe my parents were right. Like, it's going to be very hard to make it as, like, a sculptor. And, like, unless I went back to school, and I, like, really just was, like, not vibing with that. I had just spent, like, 8 years in college, and I was like, I really don't want to go back to school. I did at one point go back to school for a couple of courses, and ultimately was like, no, this isn't what I want to be doing. So it was really just like through trial and error, like, I'm going to figure out how to make this work.
Yeah. So I want to get to the tea of your industry and get to your wisdom in the field that you have been in for now a number of years, what you know so well through some trial and error. But you have a very structured and streamlined process with your own clients and with how they manage their own schedule between the work, the life, the everything to get the results or get what they want. But let's cut the bullshit and get down to it of what works for our health.
Yeah.
What
And
works
this
for
is
you, Ashley? Take us through where you're at in that own journey, in your own journey.
so what works for me and what has worked for me for probably close to a decade now at this point is when it comes to nutrition, right? That's the hardest part for most people, right? And it's the most important part of the whole thing is your nutrition, right? And that is what's going to ultimately dictate so many things, aesthetics aside, but just like literally everything,
Mhm.
is really just a life of balance.
Mhm.
So, I've tried all of the fad diets. I grew up in the time frame of like the Weight Watchers and the Curve Fitness for women. Like, I grew up around all of that, and the being a child in the 90s, and like, oh, my thighs aren't supposed to touch, I need to have this huge thigh gap. Like, that was very much the generation that I grew up in. And like, for a very long time, I always thought that that was what I was supposed to look like and what I needed to look like. But I know you can't see me, I'm sitting down wearing this huge baggy shirt, but I've always been a very like athletic looking female, right? I have thick thighs and a big butt. Like, it's just like literally, my genetics, obviously, right? So like, as hard as I tried, I never really fit into those boxes, right? I was like the more muscular or larger one than a lot of my friends. I was like really into sports and like very much so a tomboy, and like everyone else wasn't. Um, which, ultimately led me obviously to this career that I'm in now. But like, the thing that has stuck with me the most and has allowed me to live a fulfilling life and feel good and look good and be confident is to practice balance,
Yeah.
right? With my nutrition. So like, and this has usually ends up like 9 times out of 10 being the most successful option for all of my clients and all of the people that I've helped. And that is, it looks like what that balance is very different from person to person. But very much so, like, including your favorite foods, not eliminating things. Like,
Mhm.
that is a hard no for me, and I don't teach anyone to live their life that way.
Yeah.
I think it usually just blows up in your face and isn't sustainable long term. So, like, my goal for myself and others is to help them figure out what does that sustainable lifestyle look like? How do
Mhm.
we get you feeling your best, looking your best, while still being able to enjoy life at the same time?
Mhm.
Because, you know, not to be cheesy, but like YOLO, right? We only have one life. So, like, I'm not going to
Absolutely.
spend each and every day scrutinizing, every single thing I put in my mouth, or I
Right.
can't have that because it's not allowed on my diet. Like, I'm a foodie. I love food and I love adventure and just being able to travel and do new things. And I don't ever want to have, my diet be a limiting factor to not be able to do those things. And that for most people, unless you're competing, don't need to live this like strict and restrictive lifestyle that they often set onto themselves. So like what I do for myself is very much like it's exactly what I teach my clients to do. And I have been doing it for probably about a decade now.
Right. And it goes back to the whole prioritizing, you can't continue to live life and work out and do things that aren't sustainable for our own mental health, our own physical health. And like you said, food is fuel that fuels every part of us to wake up and be positive and
Oh
in
yeah.
an actionable state and empowered and be able to take action without feeling so dragged down or feeling so unbalanced because of what we're eating or what we're putting in. And it's being conscientious, but not necessarily saying you're never going to have this ever again. And that's really a that really is just kind of a death sentence.
Yeah.
And look
Yep.
at something like that to say, yeah, I can't do this. That's an ultimate way to say, I know I'm gonna fail. I know I'm going to
100%. Just setting yourself up for failure. And it's how people get stuck in the yo yo cycling of diets,
Yeah, yeah,
and ultimately stay stuck for years and decades of their lives,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yep, yeah, and I've seen that too many times. So tell me, the nutritional part of things has always been a big fuel habit of making sure it's more structured than, I mean, keeping consistent, staying on top of it, tracking certain things or making sure you're getting enough. And I know even when I was working with you, Ashley, it was very helpful to just even understand what was going into what we're putting in our body, um, how much we need on a
Yes.
daily basis to survive as humans,
Yep.
as individuals, and things of that nature. But also, tell me a little bit about the um, rest and downtime and sleep and physical abilities to, you know, get ourselves functioning. I know that sounds like a weird
Mhm.
way, but we have to
Yeah, firing on all cylinders. I would say this is the next the if we think about our health and exercise and nutrition, I actually used this visual this morning with a client as like a triangle, right? The base of the triangle is, in my opinion, 100% your nutrition. And then I would say like the next big chunk of the triangle is your rest and your recovery,
Mm,
and stress management and that side of things, right?
yeah,
So this is the part, and I definitely am guilty of this from, one of the many lessons I've learned is I was for sure the like more is better when it
mm,
came to this side of things, right? So like more exercise, more lifting, like more is going to get me the results faster or get me the results, period. And again, learned this the hard way, wasted a lot of years.
mm,
That is not the case, right? Rest is very, very important, especially if we're talking about like working out in particular. You need to be giving your body rest regularly on a weekly basis. And you also need to periodically, every 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the maturity of your background, giving yourself what we call in the fitness industry like deload weeks, where we are taking intentional weeks of time, or a
Mhm.
week of time rather, at a either completely off or at a lighter intensity. Like there's multiple ways you can do it, right? There's no like one right or wrong way to do it, but like
Right.
it needs to be a part of your regimen. And I would say that's probably one of the like next biggest things that I see people kind of like messing up on
Yeah.
is it's just more and more and more high intensity, high intensity, high intensity, no rest. And then sleep 6 hours, maybe
Yeah.
at best. And
Yeah.
then they like, get frustrated when they aren't getting the results that they want.
Right.
They feel like shit. Their body's beat down. They're having a hard time, with their snacking, or their cravings are all over the place. Their
Yeah.
like hormonally, maybe they're struggling, or, their anxiety is through the roof. And that is all, for the most part, again, I'm going to make a general statement here,
Mhm.
but for the most part, it is usually directly connected to one's rest, recovery, and stress management.
Yeah. In your own personal development of that, sort of that self-development, what steps have you taken to make sure that you have so that you're accountable for your own functioning and firing at all cylinders of that kind of second tier of the triangle? How are you maintaining?
So, training less.
Mm,
Like I said, I was always someone that was like 6 days a week, sometimes seven. I now am like 4 days a week,
mm,
sometimes three. Especially as a new mom, right? It's like my non-negotiable is definitely to work out and move my body because I enjoy it and I feel good and
yeah.
know how good it is for me. But less is more is my philosophy these days. So like peeled back a little bit on training. Um, Chris, my husband, will tell you, like, I need my sleep, as does everyone, but like, I prioritize my sleep hard. Like, I try to keep a very similar um, sleep and wake time. There's tons of research out there to show you why this is important for your own circadian rhythm and getting good quality rest and all of those things. So, like, I think figuring out again what you need to function at your best, be it to be able to fire on all cylinders, and figuring out like what does that actually look like when it comes to like when does my ass need to be in bed, and
Yeah.
when do I need to get up to do the things that I need to be able to do the next day, and making that a priority. Right, again, sometimes it doesn't go according to plan, especially if you have young children, but like we want to try to control that and keep that as consistent as possible
Mm,
all of the time. So that's something that I like is very, very important to me. And I really try to keep my bedtime within an hour or so of like being the same every single day. Um, Almost, I would say 7 days a week. There's, once in a blue moon, I stay up late, but my sleep and wake times are very similar almost every single day. And I think that's really important. And then just like managing your training volume, right? Like I think a lot of people get stuck in the trap of like they need to be doing what they were maybe doing 5, 10 years ago, but like that may not coincide with your life and your season of life at this moment in time.
yeah.
And that's okay. And we need to just be aware of that and then know how to pivot and change it. So like we can still move forward, we can still make progress, but like let's also make sure that like it fits in with our current lifestyle and isn't always like conflicting and butting heads with one another. I think
Mhm.
that's really important.
I want to know for time management, what do you find most helpful, or maybe a process or a system or a program, or
Yeah,
what do you use, Ashley? What do
I
you
love this. This is like one of my favorite things. I love to nerd out on time management. So
a time
I
blocker?
am a I am a time blocker through and through. Obviously, again, as being a new mom, it looks a little bit different than it looked like when I was just like, a dog mom, but I still use it. So every single week, typically on a Sunday or a Monday, I look at my entire next 7 days ahead. And I have been doing this for years. And I look at, what do I have going on the next few days? I write in all of and I literally, it's right next to me. I still use a handwritten planner,
Mhm.
very much
Yeah,
so,
there she goes.
since literally like middle school. Um, so I write out all of my appointments for the week, like all of the things that like I don't have control over changing the time of, right? Or I don't have control over if a client schedules a call with me, like it is at that time and that's it, right? So all of that stuff gets written out first, with buffers around it, right? Because oftentimes we like tell ourselves, okay, I have an hour meeting, but like it's not just an hour. There's
Yeah.
5 or 10 minute prep time before,
Yeah.
there's a debrief at the end, it's an hour and a half, right?
Mhm.
So making sure we're like scheduling that stuff in, but we're also being realistic. So that's my step one always. And then being an entrepreneur, mom, all of the things, right? Then I do 2 to 3 tasks per day that I need to get done, that I want to get done. And obviously I prioritize like what's moving the needle the most for me? What do I really, really have to get done? That's the first one. And then, like, what's the next most important thing? That's number two. And then number three is like, if I didn't get to this, I'm not going to feel like, damn, I really didn't do what I needed to do
Right.
today.
Always.
It can kind of get pushed along, but like
Mhm.
by Friday, I really want to have this done. And I do that for every single day. And I do that also with my workouts. So like even being a personal trainer, like I don't magically just get my fitness in. I have to, even more so now, be very diligent with my time and I have to be very organized and plan and communicate with my support team on when I can get those things in.
Yeah.
So I schedule all that in because it's very, very important to me. And then if I check all of those boxes for that day and I happen to be left with time left over, it's very much like, where am I at mentally that day? Can I do a little bit more work, or am I just going to enjoy the afternoon off or the evening off? Or,
Mhm.
you know, again, that's where I kind of like fill in the like free time, so to speak, where I have a little bit of like flexibility. And by doing this, I actually usually, and I'm a very big advocate for like, this actually usually creates more time to have more free time again, especially if you're someone that feels like you never have time to do the things you want to do. If
Right.
you time block and plan and organize a little bit, you're able to create more free time, because like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you have to create the time for the things you want to do. It it won't just magically happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Big thing is making the time for what's most important, and obviously moving certain needles forward, and it depends on what's going on in life too. I mean, it's not to say you got to be so hard up on this is how it always has to be. You always have to
100%.
at this certain time, you always have to do this at a certain time. It's like you have to be a little bit flexible with those things, but advocating for some sort of time management process in order to see something magical and wild and extreme happen in your life. There's
Yes.
too many times where we get on this rat wheel of, God, I didn't feel like I did anything this week or this day or this year. I didn't see anything happen. And I remember being in that own trap of, gosh, I was in business for 10 years and I felt like I did nothing. And you have to sit back and remind yourself, look at all the things that happened. But if you don't make the time to say, where am I going? What's my vision? Where am I moving forward to? There's something about that keeps us kind of locked down and in that mentality of, "Oh, what am I doing with my life? What is going on? I look at myself in the mirror or not, or in those regards." And so it's like advocating for some sort of process in your life will drive it so much sweeter and better in the outcome. So I appreciate
Yes.
it.
And you nailed it. Like the key is, if you take nothing away from this talk, like just remember like flexibility. Like you just have to be flexible.
Yep.
And the people that are the most successful are the ones that are flexible and practice that day in and day out.
Yep. Absolutely. I don't wanna keep you too long because I could talk to you all day long.
I know we could talk for hours.
I wanna close on a couple things because I wanna hit
Sure.
one more for sure. But what do we and what do you um need to come to terms with? Like, tell us, what do we
Mm,
need to come to terms with to move forward in who we are, to be empowered individuals, to empower the next generation. You just had a son. I have a daughter and a son, and I feel even more of a responsibility to my son than I do my daughter. I know the type of woman and female I am, but I need to make sure I come to terms with certain things on how I guide my son in the next generation of empowering women and empowering others for this next
yes.
wave. So I want to hear this.
I would say like the one thing that lights me up it would be to be okay with failing. That was something that I feel like was like made not okay in my childhood. Can't think of a better way
Yeah,
to say that right now, but like it was like, right, I go back to like, okay, I need to cheat on this test because I got to get an A and I don't know the answers. So I'm going to look over here at Jake because he's really good in this class, and then my parents are going to think I'm really good in this class, and then now you ask me anything and I don't know the answer, right? Because I cheated. Um so be okay with failing because again, throughout this journey and where I am today, like there was a lot of failure, and like it took me a really long time into my adulthood to be able to become me and like, and share that with the world because I finally was okay with failing, right? Like putting
yeah,
myself on video, starting a podcast that maybe one person listens to. Like you are going to suck at whatever it is that you're doing
mm-hmm,
initially, but
mm-hmm,
you're never going to get better at whatever the thing is if you're not okay with sucking first. And
yep,
I think that was a very, very hard pill for me to swallow, especially in
oh
my adulthood, because
yeah,
I was raised to be like, okay, you always need to be on, you always need to be perfect, you always need to like
right,
put on the show that you are, but like you're not.
yeah,
And like I missed out on probably a lot of things and getting better at a lot of things because I wasn't willing to suck.
yep. Oh, this is so good. Yep,
So that's
yeah,
probably like the one thing that I would really, especially now having kids, like want him to be okay with is like being bad at something, right? Like if you want to play a sport, like I just signed up I'm actually playing tonight in a women's basketball league again. And I was playing before I got pregnant. And now it's been a year, right? I haven't touched a ball. I've ran 2 miles in my postpartum journey and my ass is going to play basketball tonight.
yeah,
I'm probably going to be really bad. And like old me would have never put herself out there to do this because, well, I'm not going to be good. So I'm not going to do it. But like now I know that like I want to be able to be good at basketball because maybe my son is going to want to play and I want to be able to be the mom that's on the court practicing with him because that's just me as a person.
yeah,
But like if I want to get better to be able to do that with him, like I got to suck tonight and
mm-hmm,
like probably embarrass myself
mm-hmm,
to be able to get to that point because I'm not going to magically just get better at basketball.
yep, yep. This was so good. I
Yeah,
wanna,
this was
I
awesome.
wanna, I wanna know uh, two more things. I wanna know two more things. What's
Okay.
on a playlist to get you if you are or if you're having a down day, you're not as empowered, you're not as fired up, you're not ready to go. What's on a playlist? Give me something. Give me
Oh,
give
well,
me
now I'm going to have mom brain and not be able to think of the name of the song that I want to tell you. And
okay.
I'm going to try and look it up. So basically, like, if I'm really not feeling it, the genre for me is like kind of screaming heavy metal ish
Mhm. Mhm.
or serious old school, not new school, like gangster rap. It's like one end of the spectrum or the other. But
Yeah.
like we're talking like, like Biggie, Tupac, Mace, who's like, what, a 3-hit wonder, like that generation of music. Um and I can't think of the name of the song, but there is one song in particular by this band called Coheed and Cambria, who's like not even one of my favorite bands, but there's like a certain song that I will like put on, and it's like can always get me in the mood to just like hit the heavy weight, take the attempt on whatever I'm doing in the gym, or just like get my shit together. So
I love it.
those are my go-tos.
I love it. I know you always have something good playing. Um, our this whole conversation is built
Oh,
around this ethos
did I
of
lose? Oh, there you are.
repower, of power and repower. Repower is our word. What is your re word for yourself, for the people, for kind of your last uh thought on a re?
Yeah, these are great questions, by the way. I would say, so it's like, I know you said repower, but like it's my word of 2024, and I actually did a podcast episode about this, is
Yep.
pivot. So it's not necessarily like a re-word, but like
Mm-hmm.
kind of, right? In a weird
Yeah,
way, is
yeah,
like
it is.
always to redirect, right? Like if we were to make it a
Mm,
re-word,
that's
redirect,
a great
right? Probably a synonym of one another.
yes.
Always be ready to redirect, always be ready to pivot. And again, that
Mm,
ties back into our conversation earlier about being flexible.
yep.
Do that, master that, you can do anything.
Ah, this was so fucking good. This was so good. Thank you
Yeah,
for
this is fun.
opening, like busting down the doors, bringing us a little bit of vulnerability and transparency on your childhood and through life and through the struggle. The struggle is real. Everyone's got it. Everyone's got to come to terms with it. Everybody's got to shed some light on it, because sometimes it does come full circle. And most times you'll see it start to pop up like you did in your life and career. Ashley, tell us where to find you, how to engage with you, how to work with you. Give us all the deets of where you are, because everyone needs everyone needs to be in your ethos of empowerment in this sort of lifestyle redirection.
Well, thank you. And thank you again for having me. So you guys can find me on Instagram. It's fitness.byashley. You can listen to my podcast on Spotify, Beyond the Barbell. And you can also visit my website, which is just fitnessbyashley.com. I've got tons of free resources on there, free downloads, recipes, guides to get you started, links to the episodes on the podcast, like all of the things. So definitely like get on my newsletter. All of that stuff can be found through my website, and you will just like, you'll start getting all of the things on a weekly basis from me.
Yeah, I like when you do the recipe breakdowns too, like the
Yeah, yep. So I've been doing
soup,
those.
doing the
Always
juice.
cooking things up in the kitchen with my husband. Mostly, I
Mm,
will say a lot of the credit goes to him for a lot of the recipes, and he can probably hear me in the other room. I am the sous chef in a lot of situations, but we both love food and love to eat. So we're always like trying to make like healthier versions
mhm.
of the things that we really like to eat. So definitely, if you're into that, give me a follow, get on the newsletter list, and you will be the first one to know when anything new drops.
Thank you, Ashley, for doing this
Thank you.
and being
No
with us,
problem.
and redirecting our mental and physical capacities of what we think we should be doing, and ultimately what we need to be doing in our life to YOLO and live purposefully and go
I
after
really dated myself in a lot of sayings in this conversation, but hopefully you got the message across.
it. Well, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Check out Ashley and join us for another conversation. We've got some other repowers coming up, and can't wait to
Awesome.
join you back soon.
Okay.
Thanks,
See you
Ashley.
later.